so much, Nicole, for joining us on the Cash Flow Show. Today, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your business with Strand Writing Services. Could you tell me a little bit how you got started and how it's grown since you founded the company?
Yeah, actually, I would call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I had been a publishing executive, and as part of that, I was editor in chief of two monthly magazines that went out to entrepreneurs in the decorated apparel space. And so, over the 10 years that I was the editor, I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and probably got bitten by the bug. But then, unfortunately, in the industry that I was in, the print publications started experiencing a downturn in advertising, as many other industries experienced, and so my position was eliminated in September of 2017. So I thought I would go the traditional look for a new job route, and it didn't quite pan out that way because I didn't find anything that made sense. And then I just said, what if I started my own business? And everybody in my life was like, yeah, you should do that. And so it was kind of weird because I thought if I had one naysayer, maybe I would say, but no, everybody thought it was a great idea. So in November of 2017, I formed my business entity. And then in January of 2018 is when I think it was January 8th, it was like my official, I'm done with looking for jobs. I was on a job interview in the middle of Philadelphia, and at one time it would have been my dream job. And I just thought, at this point in my life, it's not really what I'm looking for. And so I put away the resume, stopped looking for jobs, and then I officially kind of launched my business. And I've been doing it full time ever since.
Oh my gosh, that's really awesome, I think, to be able to go out there and to um, start a business from scratch, especially after coming from the traditional space. Just because I know, at least when I started, because I started back in about 2017, there's still some uncertainty about freelancing versus being, your own boss. So I feel
Well,
like, yeah.
I think that was the biggest thing, though. I mean, I went into selling what I was already doing, in terms like copywriting and articles and stuff like that. But I didn't go into it thinking of it as freelancing. When people say freelancing, because I hired a lot of freelancers over the years, and I always thought of it as people that didn't have a business entity, people that were maybe doing it part time or on the side. And I was like, this is my full time gig. Like, I'm moving from a full time publishing executive job to running a full time business. And I never thought of it as freelancing. And I think because I thought of it as a business and set it up like a business from day one, because I know a lot of people don't form business entities and do certain things like get business insurance. So when you set it up that way, it starts as that entity, and so it grows because you treat it as such. That's why I think I was able to grow pretty quickly and create a sustainable but also scalable business, which is what I think we all kind of want to do, whatever
Definitely.
size it is.
Definitely. It's all about the mindset and like how you envision it from the beginning and setting that right
Yeah.
foundation. So you mentioned working with other freelancers. How big is the Strand Writing Services right now? Do you have freelancers working under you or anyone like full time, or is it primarily just you and you hire out when necessary?
So I do not have any full-time or part-time employees. I have a business manager and I also have a researcher, and both of them are set up like me where they run their own businesses and they have clients. So I would be considered a client of my business manager because she's offering business manager services to other businesses. I do all of my writing because I'm selling my intellectual property and my creativity. And so if I were to outsource, in an agency type model, then I would be sort of diluting what I'm actually selling. So I made that choice to keep my client list tight and be very specific about the projects that I do, since I'm the one doing all of the kind of the creative work. I know other people go the agency route, and I did think about that, but I decided for me, running it this way made more sense.
Right, definitely. And you said you're bringing on a business manager. When did you kind of decide that you needed like someone else there to at least help you so you could focus on the writing aspect?
Right. I would say I had been in some groups with business coaches who are like, when you hit your first 5K month, you should look to hire someone. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that number because there's a lot of stuff that business owners do that they shouldn't be doing, like, scheduling their own calendars and doing invoicing and bookkeeping and stuff like that. So I think around month four, which was April of 2018, I brought on a hourly virtual assistant. And
Mhm.
then my business manager started with me, but she was more like an executive assistant. And then the role grew into business manager, which encompassed a lot more stuff.
Right. That makes sense. So it helps to kind of hire someone that can, their role will evolve as you need them to evolve.
I mean, yeah, it could be. Again, I think that it kind of depends. Like, you get what you pay for, and I
Mhm.
always say that. So if you hire someone who's less experienced for a lower hourly rate, cool, you could have
Mhm.
them doing certain things. But I felt for me, I
Mhm.
really wanted a right hand person who knew the business inside and out, was committed, with
Mhm.
someone like me who did stay with her clients long term, because she handles a lot of that,
Mhm.
day to day client communications and the
Right.
contracts and all that stuff, because you can really get bogged down
Mhm.
with doing that stuff. And it makes sense to have somebody there helping with it earlier rather than later. Because I mean, again, as the editor of those magazines, we would often find that there would be these micro businesses and the person was literally doing everything. And it's like,
Mhm.
but why? And it's like, well, I don't want to spend any money. And I was like, but part of it is that you pay taxes on your business. And so if you have expenses that offset some of the taxes, so it makes sense to have business expenses that help you, you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
And when I started thinking of it that way, it made a lot more sense. And I mean, it really, it's just hard to do it all. And again, it depends on your size of business. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, like scaling and stuff. But for me, having a really solid right hand person that I
Mhm.
pay on a retainer basis makes more sense.
Mhm. No, that makes perfect sense. Especially to be able to free up that time so you can either make more or you can spend time with your family. Like you have that
Right.
flexibility.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so switching gears real fast, I was wondering, because you decided not to go down the agency route, you're sticking with, having a business mentor, someone who knows the business, who can help you with that side, so you can focus on the writing. What kind of revenue model do you use to make that work?
So I have two kind of structures. So
Mhm.
the bread and butter structure is retainer clients, and
Mhm.
typically we sign them now at this point in time for either 6 months or a year
Mhm.
contract.
Mhm.
So I have a monthly minimum that I need to hit for, that makes sense for life and all of that. And I've never gone below that since I set that minimum back,
Mhm.
I think in April 2018. It's only gone up.
Mhm.
So the retainer clients are set, and if we know that one is ending or something, we can bring a new one on. So I would say that in the beginning, that was how I set the foundation for my business. And then more recently, I would say in the last 8 months, I've started doing bigger copywriting projects,
Mhm.
and I stagger those out,
Mhm.
and they're higher, they're higher ticket packages, and so I supplement the retainers with those, and we get paid upfront for everything that we do. People have said, oh, that, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups where people say, oh, that's crazy. And it's like, no, it's not crazy. And actually, in the Amazon world and a lot of businesses, people are switching to 100% full upfront payment.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like if you are established in your business and you have a good track record and you have amazing testimonials and great reviews and all of that, and for 100% that you are going to deliver,
Mhm.
you should have no hesitation about asking people to do that.
Mhm.
And I would say that I've had almost no resistance. I would say in the beginning,
Mhm.
when I was a little bit unsure of that myself, I had that resistance. But once I became like 100% sure that this is the model that I'm going to operate under, I have had no resistance to it.
Okay. To me, that's amazing. I think because being in the industry myself, I'm used to kind of seeing, the retainers are paid on the back end or like half up front, half later. I think
Mhm.
being the most common, so getting it all
Yeah.
up front. Switching to that model would, I think, help a significant number of either whether you're freelancing or you're full time, like you and I are, to have that kind of peace of mind that you can then focus completely on the work because it's already paid
Right.
for and full and booked. So yeah, no,
Right.
that makes perfect sense. I've noticed that you also had like a free copywriting masterclass. Do you have any like additional revenue streams for your business that aren't client focused, like courses? Are you planning to create those kind of materials?
So at this time, I don't. In early 2021, I kind of explored the idea of
Mhm.
using Facebook or reaching out with some stuff like courses. And I realized, and it's sort of like the same with the agency model. I'm more of an artisan where I like to do the copy and do the work. And I don't necessarily want to try to teach other people how to do the work. And I sort of started thinking that if I'm a high level copywriter, it seems kind of silly for me to try to teach business owners how to write copy.
Mm-hmm.
So I did sort of explore that. I'm not going to say never, because I mean I have a background in teaching. Like I've taught at Penn State and other colleges, and I've taught corporate writing and things like that. But I would just say that the same way that I sort of explored the agency model, I did explore the alternate revenue streams. And I mean, I see people doing really well with like selling these micro courses for $27 and things like that. But I just sort of decided, I'd rather tighten my packages
Mm-hmm.
and really think about, like, one, what do I like to do? What am I good at? What am I fast at? But what gives people the most bang for their buck as far as packages, and kind of putting those together and selling those specifically. So I have the course there because I do know that people do go to the site and they take it,
Mm-hmm.
because they're just kind of interested, like they want to get to know me as a person. But I would say that right now it's just kind of there as a freebie. So again, never say never, but right now I'm kind of sticking just to the writing.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So going back to the cash flow a little bit, what kind of system or programs do you use to manage cash flow?
So we use FreshBooks,
Okay.
and one thing I will say, and this is why I was interested in talking about this topic, is I'm hyper focused on the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that having a business manager has been amazing for. We track every single expense, everything that goes in, everything that goes out. I mean, we use an Excel spreadsheet for that, and we use FreshBooks for the invoicing. And the first year that I gave my accountant the spreadsheet, he's like, I've never seen anything so comprehensive and so organized.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is, you have to look at what are you making and what are you spending, and like what percentage. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that. They're like, I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But in my business, which is a partnership LLC, I don't, it's not an S corp, so I don't get paid as an employee. So what comes in is literally coming into the business bank account, and then I'm looking at those numbers, like, well, the money that I use for my salary comes out of this. The money that I pay for. So unlike an S corp where you can maybe ignore it a little bit, like, oh, if I'm getting 100K a year, like, cool, I'm getting the salary, but what's happening to the other money and the other expenses? I'm hyper aware of what comes in and what goes out. So I would say for me, every month we are fully paid in full. Like we don't have any money that's not collected. I mean, I've talked to business owners who are like, I'm $100,000, like waiting for $100,000, and depending on the scale of the business, like the numbers can shift. But I'm like, we're never waiting for money.
Right.
We always get paid in full. Every month is like, we end where we expected to. I do forecast out, like, how much do I need to make a month, or if I want to take time off. So my business manager and I talk pretty often about the numbers. And then also there's the expense idea. So I will sometimes use coaches or business courses, and then every once in a while my business manager's like, okay, you've just spent like this much on that, like, do you want to keep doing that? And then I'll be like, oh no, maybe I don't want to do that. Or, well, maybe I want to raise up the revenue this month. So we have like very active conversations about how to keep the cash flow coming in to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something that I'm focused on. And every month I do look at what I'm spending money on, and I'm like, well, do I really need this? Or if I cut it, what else could I possibly use as far as tools? So I'm very aware of what comes in and what goes out, and try to be really like decisive and discerning about it.
No, definitely. I think that's so important, especially like at this size, when you need coaches or you need to grow, like you have to have that kind of understanding. Otherwise, it's really hard to make good decisions about where to put that money later on.
Well, even business owners that I know who have C corps,
Mhm.
they'll say, okay, well, I get my salary and I'm making, I don't know, like $1 million a year, right? And I'm like,
Right.
oh, cool. And then they're like, well, I'm spending like 2K a month on this marketing agency, and I'm like, well, what is the marketing agency doing for you? And then they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, and it's like, well, this money is
Right.
going out, but they don't really have an understanding, and they're not really looking, they don't have the
Mhm.
time. And I'm like, well, that's where you'd be saying to your business manager, your office manager, look at the contract and see what that agency is doing, and is it worth it? Because if you were going to pay the 2K for something, it should be something that's working to help grow your business, like whatever that is that you need.
Mhm.
So I think that it's easy to kind of ignore certain expenses,
Mhm.
with S corps and C corps, and as and I'm talking about small businesses. I'm not talking about like larger ones. So I'm just saying
Right.
I think it's important for people to really know what's going on and to get help if they feel like they don't have a handle on their expenses, and if
Mhm.
they're getting value out of them.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you forecast from time to time. Do you tend to do that for specific instances, or do you forecast for like a year, or 5 years, or 10 years? How do you use that component?
I mean, since I'm still kind of a young business, I have grown every single year. And
Mhm.
I do set targets for the next year.
Mhm.
And then with that, it's sort of like trying to figure out, well, if I want to make this a month and I'm one person. So
Mhm.
say I was like at 20K and I'm like, I want to hit 30K or 35K. I'm like, well, I'm one person. How could I do that? Right.
Right.
And so that's when I play with packages and I try different things, and I, might get to a new level, and then I'm like, well, is it sustainable? So I would say at this point, I'm not necessarily forecasting out like 5 years, but
Mhm.
I do know for sure that I want this to be what I do for the rest of my career. I'm not
Right.
planning to go back to traditional employment. So I think what's key too is balancing what makes sense on a personal and professional level. I
Mhm.
mean, you can hit points of burnout where you're doing too much, and then you have to say, okay, cool, the business got me to this level, which is great, and can I pull back a little bit and have the business support,
Mhm.
lifestyle, and then go back and forth. So I would say right now I'm growing year over year, and
Mhm.
that's my plan. But I'm also really thinking about what is a sustainable and scalable way to grow.
Right. Right, because you have to make sure. I know some companies, especially because I work a lot with fintech, they'll grow so rapidly that then they can't keep up because they end up having to kind of throw money to bring on more people, but then that eats up the cash flow down the line. So definitely having that control or like understanding of where you're going at least year by year, so you can grow in a way that doesn't kind of hit you hard later on, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think it also depends on your age and your lifestyle. I mean, I've thought, well, what would have happened if I started the business earlier in my career?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was like, I think it was 39 when I started this business. So I already had like 18 years of corporate experience
Mhm.
and 10 years as a publishing executive. So I was already more seasoned in the sense of managing departments, managing large budgets, managing people,
Mhm.
knowing how to sell. And I thought, well, if I was 30 and I
Mhm.
started this, I would not have had that decade of publishing executive experience. And I think
Right.
that also has kind of informed how I
Mhm.
operate. And I mean, we used to do for our magazines, we used to do like, before the TV shows, we used to do like these business rescue series, and we
Mhm.
would have businesses like apply, and we would literally fly out teams of people
Mhm.
that were experts in this industry out to these businesses, and we would send a reporter, of course, and they would cover the story. But I would read like the stories of woe of businesses, and I would see how the experts came in. And so I came into my business with a more, like, I mean, I think starting a business is already a risk taking thing. So
Mhm.
that's, what it is. But I do take a more cautious approach to it.
Right.
I really try to be strategic in what I do. Like
Mhm.
8 months ago, I said, I want to start offering copywriting services. So I took courses, worked with certain coaches, built my packages, and I had a very specific plan. I redid my website.
Mhm.
I've done like 7 back-to-back projects in copywriting and gotten some great testimonials. Now I'm kind of tired, so I'm gonna pull back a little bit. But the
Mhm.
thing was, my husband said to me, he's like, well, you said you were going to do this, and now like you've done it. Like you had your plan and you said you were going to do it. So I guess, just kind of coming back around to it, I think
Mhm.
it's like really important to think about what is feasible. And if you want to grow, then hiring a team makes a lot of sense. And so that's, and so then that's a whole other thing, thinking about the roles you need, and are they going to be employees? Are they going to be, contract, and all of that. So it's like a whole other kind of planning. And I frankly didn't want to do that. I don't want to have employees.
Right. And that makes sense. And it's important, to have the business model that works best for you. Otherwise, why go into self-employment
Right,
in the first place? So
right, right.
what other advice would you give small businesses today in terms of monitoring their business finances and cash flow?
I mean, I would say the number one thing truly, and I can't say it enough, is
Mhm.
upfront payment.
Mhm.
Um, I see in a lot of writing groups where people say that's not possible, and it's totally possible. But part of that also comes with experience and being good at what you do. You can't, I mean, writing is a skill. You can't just say, I'm going to start a writing business and I've never written anything before. And, now I'm doing this. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
so that's a whole other conversation. But you have to have a business where you're good at what you do. You
Mhm.
have to have a really good sense of who your customers are and what industry is going to pay you decently. I would say that if you're a writer and you're dealing solely in publications, you're not going to make a lot of money, and a lot of publications pay on the back end or when they publish it, and that's just their
Right.
model. If you work with corporations,
Mhm.
it's a lot more likely that you can get retainers. And I think with the current climate, with people being used to remote work, and with companies they'd rather hire contract people or companies, then that's important. But I would just say that it's really important to think about, what is a realistic number that you can hit, and really just committing to saying, like, I'm not going to go below that. I know people who have different lifestyles
Mhm.
who are like, well, I'm okay with looking for 4 new customers a month and doing a project a week and then moving on. Whereas I'm kind of like, I don't necessarily want that hustle.
Mhm.
So I like to have the solidity of the retainers.
Mhm.
So I think for me, that was a really important thing that I did. And it was a process that I went through too, learning, like, what is the structure of retainer? What is the contract? I mean, I have had a million iterations of my contract. And, as I talk to my attorney, like, oh, I've had a new issue come up. Like, how do we tweak it?
Mhm.
But I think it's figuring out. So whether it's like you're doing courses, whether you're doing coaching, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling a service, like I'm selling, like, it's just really important to think about, who's going to buy it at the highest possible price, and what, what can you give them that's going to provide that top level value
Mhm.
without burning yourself out. So I think, again, and I think the one other thing I would say is, people not charging enough. I see that a lot too.
Mhm.
That they really undercharge. And I think in the beginning, you may charge less if you're getting started, but I've heard people say that you should, every time you sell a new package, upcharge, 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 keep raising the prices,
Mhm.
because the more people you help, and if you're legitimately good at what you do and get them results, you
Mhm.
can keep charging more. So I think charging way too low is a
Mhm.
problem that I see. Um, and I think also not raising your prices like year over year. I mean, everything goes up,
Mhm.
so you should
Right.
raise your prices incrementally. And again, most companies understand that that's something that
Right.
happens. So I would say that those are kind of
Mhm.
some additional thoughts related to that.
Oh no, definitely. Like all three are fantastic, especially retainers. I know when I switched to retainers, it was just like I could relax finally because you had that security, like mental security, so then you can focus on doing good work instead of finding the next thing. It's just a huge game changer.
And I think also, again, it's something that you step up. When I started, I was doing 3 month retainers, and then I realized that that was just too short, because month one you're kind of onboarding and getting to know
Mhm.
them. Month two you're like, oh, cool, and then month three you're like, you're thinking, ooh, we got to renew. So then I gotta ask them if they want to renew. Then I gotta send them an updated contract, and then I gotta, like, wonder if they're gonna renew. So then I started doing 6 month contracts minimum. Like, if you sign on with me, it's 6 months minimum.
Mhm.
But now recurring clients will sign on for a year.
Mhm.
So I just signed a new retainer, and I was like, okay, it's 6 months. And he's like, yeah, cool.
Awesome.
And then, so I would say that's the thing too, that you evolve your contract, you lengthen your retainer, terms,
Mhm.
length of time terms. So that gives you more security. But again, they value it too, because they know they have somebody helping them who knows their business. that they
Right.
can trust.
Exactly. So it's all about providing that value too.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Nicole, for your insights. I really appreciated speaking with you today.